Checo Cybernoid is one of those classic releases which redefines what it means to bring an arcade-style experience onto the humble ZX Spectrum. Other than its follow-up, it's a concept which has more or less languished, at least until now, where in the space of a few months, we've gotten 2 branded new Spectrum games, which take Cybernoid's design, but run with them and twist them about in their own special ways. The first of these is Hyperkill. And the second, none other than Vallation. And in this video, I'm going to check them both out and see just how do they both fare in their own ways in taking on that formula of a classic. First up, we have Hyperkill, developed by Mat Recardo. Your mission in this one is to navigate a complex made up of 44 rooms, aiming to get to the end, activate the security systems, and hopefully defend the base against an oncoming alien threat. Along the way, you'll also be taking out any enemies which have made it inside the base so far. Yeah, it's a bit of a simple scenario, but like its inspiration, Hyperkill is quite a challenge to play through. The biggest change that you're going to see is really around the level design. Cybernoid's levels tended to be twisting, complex mazes, though still linear. Here, the linear path pretty much goes in a horizontal direction. It's kind of clearer to see your progression through the base as a result, though you may have liked the extra challenges which the twists and turns offered in Cybernoid. You're also going to be dealing with weapon emplacements and other obstacles. The bad news is the emplacements are indestructible. As for the other obstacles, well, you've got a little trick up your sleeve that makes it handy. Holding down the fire button lets you drop a grenade, and that works wonders for clearing them out. Much like Cybernoid, however, taking out enemies will in fact drop some power-ups for you. The ever so faithful refiring gun makes its appearance, and you've also got temporary invulnerability, which is incredibly handy for getting through some of the trickier screens. The one change I truly appreciate is the addition of a shielding system. Instead of being turned into a giant pile of flaming debris when an enemy hits you, now you'll actually survive those. The shield will take a bit of a hit, but thankfully it'll take quite a few before you run out and actually do lose one of your lives. Thankfully though, there are pickups which will recharge your shield, helping you survive another day if you do get a bit of a scratch on it. Presentation wise, things kind of do look fairly bare bones. You do have controls for keyboard and joystick, but there's not much of a title sequence, which to me I kind of don't mind, as it really fits in with that early Spectrum budget game vibe. So it loads quick, it's got that, and more importantly, if you are running it on a 128K machine, you'll get a great AY soundtrack playing in the background on top of the beeper sound effects which are already in use. All up, it makes for a solid package that really fits in at a budget price. Now for our second game, and that is Vallation, which funnily enough is actually a conversion. That's right, Vallation was originally developed for the C64 by UK demo group Cosign as an entry in the 2013 RGCD 16K compo, and converted for the Spectrum by Tardis Remakes. The original freeware release for the 48K machines added an extra level, bringing it up to 4, then raised the challenge by making the enemies fire at you. This physical release is enhanced further for 128K machines, adding a 5th level, which is actually remixed in how it plays compared to the earlier ones, along with AY music and sound effects, plus many more tweaks and improvements. Like its inspiration, the levels here are linear, and they do curve back on themselves. so you'll be revisiting screens more than once as you twist and navigate your way through each of the stages. So, I've just got to get it out of the way. This game is tough. Real tough. And that's not just in general, but actually over the original C64 game. Part of this really relates to the enemies being active threats instead of the passive targets they were on the C64 original. This results in several screens where navigating through becomes a lot trickier, as not only will you be trying to avoid missiles located in the scene, but also doing it whilst avoiding gun emplacements that are trying to shoot you down. The other thing which makes it a bit trickier as well is the physics, specifically the gravity. I don't know how well this is going to come across in the footage, but when playing it, the gravity felt much stronger to me than it did in the C64 original. This one is probably fairly minor in the scheme of things, but the game feel is dramatically different as a result. Weapon-wise, things are pared back quite a lot here. Your ship is really only equipped with its primary laser cannons. This really makes sense when you think about the fact that this game, at least in its original C64 form, is not about blasting everything that moves, but rather avoiding your way through the obstacles to get through each level. Whilst the Spectrum version has been changed to now have more hazards that you can shoot, the weapons haven't really been upgraded to match. This combat-heavy focus of the Spectrum version is something that I'm in two minds about. I really loved the way the C64 version twisted the formula and made it about evasion, avoiding enemies, and getting through screens without getting into combat. And when you died, the fact it wiped all the enemies out of the screen really went to show that for you. Being more combat focused means the Spectrum version has a slightly different game feel. I'm getting used to it, but it's sort of weird to see a conversion do that, change the formula so dramatically. As a package though, Vallation has some very solid presentation. You've got customizable keyboard controls, joystick support, and of course, a very lovely high score table. All of this makes it feel like a more polished, full price release that in its own way would have made for a great entry on the shelves of a late 1980s games retailer. So let's start tidying things up here. I absolutely love that both these games exist. I love that independent developers have taken the concept from Cybernoid and run with it in their own ways to create two completely different twists for the player. Hyperkill certainly is a much straighter experience here, paring down the cargo recovery and weapon selection mechanics to give you a straightforward blaster which offers a more careful progression through its singular level. As a package, at a budget price, I think it does a great job of giving you some very fun thrills and experiences. And you know what? I really want to come back and revisit it. I'd love to make it further in. And that's exactly what a good game designer would make you want to do in an arcade style game like this. As for Vallation, it is a very big twist on the C64 original. And honestly, if you haven't played it, it really makes for something that's great and tough in its own right. I really want to push further on this. I got pretty far on the C64 version, but I really want to see those two new levels that have been added here. It also is well worth its price. Both of these games are well worth the prices that they're charged for, whether you're going to get them as a download and run them in your Spectrum emulator or your Spectrum. And of course, if you want a real cassette, both of these are available from Psytronik at quite a reasonable price. Something that is probably not much more than budget price when you factor inflation in. Both games come strongly recommended by me and are well worth checking out. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap here. Thank you very much for watching. This is actually the last main episode I'm doing for the year, so thank you for everyone who's been around the entire year as I've been doing these videos. I always love hearing from people, and I can't wait to bring you some really cool videos next year. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.